Welcome to our series on programming your position for success. Now, I hope you've all had a chance to listen to the audio CD because that'll give you an idea of what you're going to see in the next few lessons. And what we're going to do in this particular lesson is we're going to start to develop our shorthand language. Remember, what we're doing, what makes this program different than other programs on position is that we're addressing our efforts to our subconscious mind so that basically we change the software in our mental computer. And we do that by doing two things. Number one, through visualization, through our mental pictures, and number two, through self-talk. So we're going to have some interesting mental images as far as correcting your position is concerned. And then with the self-talk, we're going to come up with very specific buzzwords that will serve as little reminders for you as a position check. Now, I'm going to use buzzwords that Ruth and I use all the time, and you're welcome to use those words. But if you have either a mental image or a buzzword that means more, it's more meaningful to you, then by all means use that. We're just giving you a little format, a little formula to follow. So I want to introduce you to my cohort here now. Ruth, can you come on up? And she has Sigmund Freud, Ziggy. This is Ruth Hogan Polson. Say hi to the fans out in video land. This is Ruth and Ziggy. And we're going to talk, as I mentioned in the CD, we're going to start, hi.
Hi.
The way you should always start when you work on your position. Rather than working on your extremities, you want to start from your core, you want to start from your center, and then we will work down from the center and up from the center. So the first thing that I want you to think about, I have a little visual aid for you here, hang on a second, is I want you to think about your seat being like a target. And the bullseye is the center of the target. And you want each of your seat bones equidistant from the bullseye so that you know that you're sitting in the center of the horse. So if you can imagine that Ruth was sitting on this target, her seat bones would be equidistant from the bullseye. So if I see her sitting off a little bit to the left or to the right, why don't you just face this way here? Either to the left or to the right, I'll say the word bullseye, and she'll know to center herself in the middle, very good, in the middle of the saddle. And then once we have the bullseye, once we have her centered in the middle of the saddle, what we want to do is basically align her body, stack her bones in a vertical channel above our bullseye. Now, if you look again at the target, you'll notice that we have longitudinal balance and we also have lateral balance. And we're going to talk about that lateral balance first. And I have another visual aid to show you that. This is I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but this is a slinky. When I was a kid, I used to play with slinkies. And if we put our slinky, imagine this as a channel on top of our bullseye, ideally we want to stack our bones inside this channel. But the slinky can be in front of the vertical channel, it can be behind the channel, it can be off to the left, or it can be off to the right. And we want to make sure that not only do you stack your bones inside this channel, but notice, think about the rings of this slinky, that they're equidistant apart, that your ribs are equidistant so that you don't collapse in your waist to the left or collapse in your waist to the right. So another, besides slinky, aligning your bones inside the slinky, another buzzword that we're going to use as far as aligning your body, is notice this lovely sweater that Ruth has on. You see the zipper. She has a vertical zipper, and she also has a line, a horizontal line, so we can see whether or not her bones are stacked inside this vertical channel. And you can see right now that she isn't, that she has one hip lower than the other, and her zipper isn't straight. So from the target, from the bullseye, as she aligns herself in that vertical channel, she's going to make her zipper straight. There you go. So that she's absolutely, the zipper is perpendicular to the ground. So the word zipper will remind her to sit straight. Another thing that will help her think about sitting straight, sometimes we use the word toothpick. What I want you to visualize, that's good, is that you have two toothpicks and they go from the bottom of your last rib to your waistband, to your belt. Same thing on the other side. Now, if you're sitting the way Ruth is now, she's going to get jabbed by the toothpick on the right side, and the one on the left side is going to fall off. It's going to fall out. So let's get your toothpicks even between your last rib and your belt. Very nice. That's another thing that you can think about. Here's another image for you. This is a carpenter's level. And you notice that there's a little bubble in the middle. And when the level is level, I'm talking about her hips now, then the other way. Yeah, there you go. Here she is like this, and the bubble is not in the center of the level. Now make your hips level, and the bubble comes into the center. So our buzzword for this is going to be level. So we're just going to watch a couple of these things, and Ruth is going to get crooked for me, and I'm going to say one of our buzzwords, and she's going to make herself straight. So if you could just turn Ziggy around and walk down the center line away from the camera with your hips either to the left or to the right. Great. And now bullseye. Beautiful. And now put your hips the other way. Good. Now bullseye, so your hips are off to the right. Very good. And just stay just like that and walk a little further down. Okay, and turn around, come down the center line. Remember, think about the slinky as being a channel, and we want to stack her bones inside that vertical channel. Now put your upper body either to the left or to the right, and you can look at her zipper. Okay, her zipper is to the left now. So the buzzword is zipper, and make your zipper straight and perpendicular to the ground. And now collapse your waist and use your toothpicks. So each toothpick is between your last rib and your belt, and collapse your waist the other. Okay, that's fine. Very good. And the carpenter's level. Very good. Okay. So now turn Ziggy around so that you're broadside this time. So that's our lateral channel. We want our hips, we want to be sitting on the bullseye with our seat bones equidistant from the bullseye. We want to be sure our zipper is straight and that we've got our toothpicks in from our last rib to the top of our belt. And that's our lateral channel, neither leaning to the left nor to the right, or hips to the left or hips to the right. We also have a longitudinal channel where you can be leaning, go ahead, too far forward, or you can be leaning too far back. Okay, and we want to get you upright again. Classical position, our plumb line should be ear, shoulder, hip, and heel. So we want to stack our bones this way in our longitudinal channel, in our longitudinal balance. Now, if you come from a hunter background, you're used to having tight hips and leaning a little bit in front of the vertical. So we have some exercises and some buzzwords that we can use to get you to open your hips, relax your hips so that you can be vertical rather than in front of the vertical. So let's just kick your feet, this foot out of the iron for a second. And I want you to just lean a little bit forward. The first thing I want you to think about is a marionette or a puppet. Okay, and we're going to loosen these tight hips by pretending that I have a string attached to her ankle, and I'm going to pull your lower leg back and get yourself vertical, and then the foot down, good, and pull your lower leg back, good, and down, and do that again. Now look at her thigh and her knee as she does that. Her upper leg is very long and her knees are pointed down. So if she visualizes that she's a puppet on a string, a marionette, she can have that long thigh muscle and the knee pointed down, and that will open her hips. So what did that feel like to you besides the puppet? What does that?
Feels like I might be kneeling down on the ground, like in the garden, kneeling down.
Kneeling down in the garden, pulling up weeds. So we could call that gardening knees. That's another way that we can think about loosening the hips so that the upper body isn't in front of the vertical because the hip angles are too tight. Okay, very good. Now, put your leg in riding position, but don't take your irons. And we're going to do another little exercise. Don't do it yet. I'm going to explain it first, where she's going to take her legs away and then just softly drape them back around Ziggy's side, and legs away and drop them back. And this is also going to loosen this area too. So just do that a couple of times. Legs away, drop them back, legs away, drop them back. Good. Once more. And tell me what that would feel like to you.
Feels like frog movement.
Frog movement, frog legs. Okay, so if we say frog legs, we're talking about loosening our hips in that direction too. So the looser we are with our hips, the more we can be longitudinally stacked correctly as far as not being in front of the vertical. Now we can also be behind the vertical. Just do that for a second, okay? And then you can just relax, because I know that's hard to do. A lot of times riders do that. They sit behind the vertical, especially in extended trot, because they think that they're driving the horse forward. But what you're actually doing, if you sit behind the vertical and you lose that plumb line, ear, shoulder, hip, heel, is that you end up driving the horse's back down and making him hollow. And you end up sitting with what's called a heavy seat. And I think sometimes there's a little confusion between a heavy seat and a deep seat. A deep seat is desirable. In fact, a deep seat is actually a light seat, because with a deep seat, what you're doing is you're taking your body weight and distributing it all around the horse. You see, your seat isn't just your two seat bones. If you had full seat breeches on, it's everything from the inside of one knee, up your thigh, across your butt, down through the other thigh, and to your knee. So if you imagine that you distribute your body weight along that large surface area, that's a deep seat, and that's actually a very, very light seat. But if you're leaning back and you're putting your weight on your two seat bones, that's a very heavy seat, and that seat can drive the horse's back down. So in order to get you vertical again, and not behind the vertical in this case, we have a couple of exercises, and we're going to use these exercises, visualize the exercises, and then attach some buzzwords to these exercises. So the first one I want you to do, I have him, is just put your arms straight up over your head with your arms right by your ear. Very good. Okay, so you guys can all visualize that. What does that feel like to you?
Stick them up.
Stick them up, okay? Reach for the sky. So that's the feeling. If I say stick them up or hold up or reach for the sky, you're going to visualize that, and look how vertical that makes her. Now put your arms right straight out in front of you. Point your fingers straight ahead. Good. There you go. What does that feel like?
Sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking. You see,
The wall.
this is what I want you to do. She had to think about what that felt like to her. You can just relax for a second. And that's really important, that, like I said, you're welcome to use our words, but you need to use the image and the word that resonates for you, because that's the one you're going to remember. So this is sleepwalking, okay? And then arms straight out to the side. What do you feel like there?
Airplane.
Airplane, like an airplane. Now take that airplane, and I want you, from your torso, keeping your hips square, to swivel one arm back and one arm forward, and actually with your eyes, watch your back hand. There you go. Keep your hips level. Beautiful. or hips square rather, and level. Good, good. And once more this way. Awesome. So what does that feel like to you?
Could be a washing machine.
A washing machine. Okay, so let's say you can relax for a second. Let's say you're on a circle, and you know on a circle your shoulders should be parallel to the horse's shoulders and your hips should be parallel to the horse's hips. But let's say you're circling to the right and you have your right shoulder forward and you're sitting against the bend of the horse. If you visualize washing machine, you can bring that right shoulder back so that your shoulders are parallel to the horse's shoulders. So we're almost done with our center, with our core. But getting back to my slinky, let me get my slinky again. Remember, the slinky can move in any number of ways. It can be forward, it can be back. You want to see Ziggy? It can be to the left, it can be to the right. Or you could have your shoulders over your hips, but over your seat rather, but your top of your pelvis could be over to the left or over to the right. Or you could be arching your back and tipping your pelvis that way, or you could have a roach back and be tipping your pelvis that way. And what we want is a neutral pelvis. So show me arched back. Okay, and now show me roach back where you tip your pelvis the other way. Good. And now with a neutral pelvis. Very good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use, this is all about the seat, all about our core. We're going to come up with a couple of key words for the seat for our core in the traveling gaits. So if you'll just take Ziggy on a circle in the walk there. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a little rising trot. And what I want you to think about seat-wise is that you want to stay vertical. You want your hips to be open so that you can stay vertical, and you bring your hips, good, forward as you rise. Very good. And what I want you to think about with that image is that you have a bungee cord attached to your hips and attached to the horse's hocks. And each time you rise very high, 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 you bring the horse's hind legs underneath. Very good. Now show me the opposite of that. Show me leaning forward and your hips very tight. Good. And now use your bungee cord and bring his hind legs underneath. Yeah, by bringing your hips underneath your shoulders. Almost think rib cage in front of your hips. Good. All right, so walk for a second. So bungee cord, if we're not being vertical in rising trot, bungee is going to be our buzzword for that. Now, I want to just talk, we're going to do sitting trot in a second, and once again focusing on your hips, the looseness of your hips. I want you to think about the fact that the walk marches and the trot swings and the canter springs. Those are good buzzwords as well. You can be riding around thinking that as you're walking, you can say march. As you're trotting, you can say swing, and as you're cantering, you can say spring. So, as Ruth sits the trot on a circle here, even though Ziggy doesn't have a lot of motion in he doesn't have a lot of movement in his trot, she's going to be thinking with her loose hips, swing, swing, swing the hips so that her hip angles, good, open and close like a hinge. Very good. Good. Very nice. Okay, and then you can walk. And the last thing that we're going to do as far as the traveling gaits is we're going to think about the bound in a canter. In the canter, the motion of the horse encourages us to rock our upper body. But what often happens with riders, if you watch me here, is that they rock their upper bodies in front of the vertical, up to the vertical, in front of the vertical, up to the vertical. You can see how tight my hips are when I do that. Also, I want you to imagine if you had arrows that extend down from your seat bones, whichever way those seat bones point for a moment is the direction that you're sending the hind legs. So you can see if you have forward rocking of your body, you're pushing the hind legs out the back door, out the back door, out the back door. However, if you pretend you're sitting in a rocking chair and just for a moment your upper body comes a little behind the vertical and then you stop it when it's on the vertical, so like you're in a rocking chair and you're opening those hip angles. If you extend those arrows down from your seat bones, you can see for a moment that as you rock back, you open your hips and your seat bones take the hind legs with you, so that the hind legs, you encourage them to come under the body rather than pushing them out the back door. And simply by having your rocking chair upper body and opening your hips, without doing anything else, your seat has a passive driving effect. You're not actively driving, but it has a passive driving effect. So Ruth, if you could just pick up the canter and first show rocking in front of the vertical. That's right, with tight hips. Very good. This is what we see a lot of. Good. And now do the rocking chair. Bring your upper body behind the vertical just for a moment. Very nice. And then bring it up to the vertical and it stops when your shoulders are on that plumb line. Beautiful. Beautiful. Good. Good. All right. And let's give Ziggy a little break and we'll be back in just a second. So now we've finished getting you centered over your bullseye and we've stacked your bones inside our vertical channel. And from here, we're going to work down with our mental images and our buzzwords, and then we'll work up and do the same thing. So I want to start with the knee. She looks quite good. Ruth looks great here as far as having, like I said, that plumb line, ear, shoulder, hip, heel, because she has a nice bend, a nice angle in her knee. So I have a little folding ruler to help you visualize that angle at the knee. And so here we have that angle just about like that, and that looks good. Now, oftentimes riders have an angle that's a little bit too acute. And Ruth, can you just bring there you go, your lower leg too far back. And you can see that this angle is too closed. It's too acute. I see that a lot, let's say, in a shoulder in, where a rider brings the inside leg too far back, where it should be on the girth. And then just slightly kick your toe forward, just slightly. There you go, not too much. Okay, and we often see this where the angle is too open, where the lower leg is either off or the lower leg is kicked forward, not underneath your body. And then close that angle so that you have, just normal angle. There you go. So you want to visualize that you don't have an angle that's either too acute with your lower leg too far back or too open with your lower leg in front of you. Okay, so let's continue to work down the leg. A lot of times people think it's very important to have heels jammed really far down. And I suppose if you're jumping where your angles, your ankle and your knee and your hip are more acute, it's important to have your heel down. But for your dressage, we just want your heel just a little bit lower than your toe so that you can have very soft ankles, so that they can be shock absorbers. And what that makes me think of, just recently I was watching the Olympics on TV and I was watching the divers and they were getting ready. Imagine that I was going to do a backwards flip off of a diving board. You really have to imagine that, because you would not see me doing that. But anyhow, when they have their toes at the end of the diving board or the springboard, they get a nice little bounce and then they lift from the diving board and do their backwards flip. So show me a springy ankle. Yeah, springboard or diving board. That will be our buzzword for these ankles that are loose. They're not rigid. They can absorb the motion and be like shock absorbers for you, which is what they're designed to do. Now, I think I mentioned in the audio CD that I started with hunters. And back in my hunter days, and I think you did too, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. So show me a lower leg, a hunter lower leg. There you go. Notice she's gripping with the back of her calf and her toes are out. And a lot of times people say, get your toes in, get your toes in. But I want you to think instead, heels out. There you go. You can keep your lower leg softly near his side. Good, and that gets her foot parallel to the horse. Now make that transition again, Ruth, from the hunter leg, good, to heels out. And what does that make you think of? What's a good buzzword for that?
Makes me feel a little bow-legged.
A little bow-legged, like a cowboy. So we could either say bow-legged or cowboy. And it's not that we really want her to go with her toes in. We want her feet parallel to the horse. But if she's already riding like this, if she thinks bow-legged or cowboy, then she's going to end up with her foot parallel to the horse and her flat of the calf on his side. Okay, now let me see you stand on your toes basically and have your heels up. Okay, this is a very common problem we see, and a lot of times the correction is heels down, heels down, heels down. But let's think of it from another point of view. Let's just think toe up. There you go. And once again, ride incorrectly and then toe up. Perfect. Okay, so now we've done the lower part of your body, and we're going to start from your center again, and we're going to work up. And the first thing we're going to think about is lifting your sternum so that your chest can be wide. And I think maybe just stand just a little bit at an angle. Bring Ziggy's face just not completely toward, there you go. So what I want you to do is just collapse. And you see she's got all these wrinkles in the front of her shirt. And rather than thinking so much about lifting her sternum, if she thinks, go ahead, about taking, there you go, beautiful, taking the wrinkles out of the front of her shirt, that gets her to lift her sternum. That was so beautiful. Do that again. So sit collapsed, look at all the wrinkles in her sweater, and then take the wrinkles out of the front of your shirt. So wrinkles will be our buzzword for lifting the sternum. Okay, now I want you to take your shoulders and you're going to lift them up towards your ears and then drop them. That's right, but there you go. And again, lift the shoulders and drop them behind your ribs. Very good. So what does that feel like to you?
In the end position, it feels like I'm opening my wings or spreading my wings.
Okay.
My wings attached to my shoulder.
Wings attached to your shoulders. She said in the end position, it was like she was opening her wings, like her wings were attached to her shoulders. That's great. Okay, and now let me see you, I see this mistake often when there's tension in a rider's neck. Go, yeah, there you go, with a jutting chin. And you can see that her bones are not stacked correctly anymore. Her ear is not over her shoulder or her hip. And I want you to think about taking the back of your neck and putting it against your collar. Beautiful. Good. And again, chin forward, and then that's right, the back of your neck against her collar. We're going to call that ring around the collar. Now you can see that she looks quite vertical here, and her head is stacked absolutely correctly over the rest of her upper body. And keep your head like that, but I want you to peek down at Ziggy's neck. Yeah, that's something that a lot of people do. They look down. It's like, almost like you think if you're not looking at the horse's head and neck, it might fall off. But I know that you know that that's not going to happen. So just turn a little bit more broadside here. And we're going to visualize, as your head is straight but your eyes are down, we're going to visualize that she doesn't have her hair done up like that she has a ponytail, and I'm going to pull her ponytail down. Good. And then eyes down and pull your ponytail down. So ponytail is going to be our buzzword for having your eyes up. Okay, so we've done the center, we've done the lower leg, we've done the upper body, and all that's left is to work on our arms. So the first thing we're going to talk about are our elbows. And I want you to think, maybe turn him, I'm sorry to keep making you turn him, but turn him a little bit again so we can see what a lot of people do when they have tension in their shoulders. They have sumo, what I call sumo wrestler arms, okay? And what we want to do, now that you've done that, turn a little bit back. I want you to visualize that I have a string with a 10-pound weight attached to the string so that I pull her elbows from this position to this position. Okay, from this position to this position. And so you can think of this as heavy elbows because you've got a 10-pound weight attached to your elbows. Now let's take another extreme as far as elbows are concerned. A lot of times riders ride with a very straight arm with no bend in the elbow at all, and that's an important thing for you to understand, that a straight arm has no give. It has no elasticity. You have to be able to have a bend in your elbow in order to have an elastic arm. So I want you to picture that your arm forms the letter L, and that the bend in the letter L is pointed straight down to the ground. Very good. Go back to straight arm. Straight arm, and then make an L, and the bottom of the L is pointed toward the ground. Now, let Ziggy walk in a circle here. We're going to continue to talk about elbows in 3 gaits. And the first thing we're going to talk about is that in the walk, and also actually in the canter, you'll see that in a second too, the horse uses their head and neck forward and back. And so in order to allow for that movement, the elbows have to open and close like you're rowing a boat. So row, row, row the boat. That's beautiful. So they start in home position with that bend like the letter L, and they do almost come straight for a moment, but then they come back to home position. Now, just for curiosity, Ruth, take up a little more contact and don't row the boat. Let's see what Ziggy does if you just pin your elbows on your side. Yeah, you see immediately his gait got shorter, and then follow, and let's see what he does. Without her doing anything else, he's able to walk with longer strides. And once again, stiffen your arms and stop rowing the boat, and his stride gets shorter, and some horses will actually stop. Okay, and then row the boat again. So you want to be sure that you're not blocking the horse from walking because you don't have your elastic arms following. Okay, now you can just relax for a second. Just turn onto the center line down there and halt. We're going to talk about rising trot in a second, but I'm going to give you another image. I have a chair here. Your elbows also, you see the point of your elastic elbows is they allow for movement. And in the walk and in the canter, the horse uses his head and neck forward and back. So your elbows have to open and close like you're rowing a boat to allow for that movement. In the rising trot, or in the trot period, the horse's head and neck doesn't move. But in rising trot, there is movement. You move, you go up and down. So your elastic elbows have to allow for that movement, and they need to open and close, but not in the same way that they did in the walk and in the canter. They need to open more like a hinge on a door. And a good way for you to get the feeling of opening your elbows like a hinge is take a chair like this, or maybe your desk at home, and put your hands in riding position. And I want you to rise and keep your baby finger, the bottom of your hand, in contact with the chair. Now look at my elbows. They open, bend, open, close, open, close. If I don't open and close these elbows, my hands are going to go up and down and up and down and up and down. So, hey Ruth, you watched me do that. What does that remind you of when I do that?
Well, I've never tried it, but cleaning, washing, fashion way.
Okay, what she said is, and I've never tried it either, remember, I don't know, back in the 20s or 30s, the old scrub board, washing the clothes on the scrub board? So washing the clothes is going to be our buzzword for opening and closing the elbows and rising trot. So Ruth, go ahead and just show us a little bit of that. Good, look at her elbows, beautiful. Wash the clothes, wash the clothes, wash the clothes. Very nice. Now stiffen your elbows and see how her hands go up and down. Good. Because her elbows are stiff, They're not elastic and allowing for the movement of her going up and down. And now wash the clothes again. Good, beautiful. Very good. And then walk. Okay, so I told you that the elastic elbows allow for movement, and that the movement in the canter, as far as the horse using the head and neck, is the same that it is in the walk, which means we have that similar motion of row, row, row the boat. But interestingly enough, riders seem to find it pretty easy to row the boat in the walk and not so easy to row the boat in the canter. So we're going to come up with a different visual image and then a different buzzword. In a second, Ruth is going to canter, and she's going to get up in a two-point position, and she's going to pretend she's a jockey galloping down the track. And then from that position, with her jockey arms, she's going to sit and keep her elbows moving. Good, good. Hands a little lower, but keep your elbows like that. Good. Now sit and keep your elbows moving. Beautiful. Hands a little lower, but keep those elbows moving. Beautiful. And we're going to call this jockey arms. Good. Now, just for argument's sake, to show what happens when you don't have your jockey arms, stiffen your elbows. Let's see what Ziggy does. And you see, he breaks to the trot. Good, and then you can walk, and then you can bring him up here. You see, and a lot of times riders think that their horse isn't going forward in the canter, but it's the same thing as in the walk. If you're not allowing the horse to use his head and neck, you block him and he gets discouraged and he wants to break to the trot. And then your leg is kicking, saying, keep cantering, but your stiff elbows are saying, I'm blocking you and you can't canter. So jockey arms is going to be our buzzword for those elastic elbows in the canter. Okay, so we're almost done with our buzzwords. We want to talk, hi Ziggy, we want to talk about your wrists for a second. Okay, now, a lot of times people get very, very stiff in the wrists. So what I want you to think about is putting your hands together for a second and making little circles with your wrists, just like this, just so that we unlock the elbows. Ziggy says, I have a fly on my shoulder here. There you go. Good, good. Keep your fingers closed around the reins as you do that. We'll call that bobbling your wrists. Bobble if I see the wrists get stiff. Another thing that riders do is they show stiff wrists in another way, in that they have a break here at the end of their forearm and the back of their hand. Good. And I want you to pretend that I don't want to say that you've broken your arm, but imagine a splint if you had broken your arm. And you had a splint from your forearm through the back of your hand, and it didn't allow you to do this. It also didn't allow you to do that. So if I see a bend in your wrist the wrong way, I'm going to say splint, so that your forearm and the back of your hand are in the same plane. And I'm going to talk about having your hands symmetrical in a second, but another thing that, and this relates to the wrists, another thing that riders often do is they think that they have a very light contact if they ride with an open hand. But what I want you to experiment with is riding with or just standing with your fingers open, and feel how stiff. Open your fingers, come sideways. There, open your fingers. Feel how stiff your wrists are. Yeah, rigid, absolutely rigid, even though her fingers are open and it feels like a light contact. Now, curl your fingers around the reins and look how much more mobile her hand can be, her wrist can be. So you always want to ride with a closed hand. He can make a little circle there, that's fine. And so I like to think sometimes, as far as curling my fingers around the reins, I want them curled around the reins, but I don't want to have a death grip on the reins. So I pretend that I either have a baby bird in each hand, or I have a raw egg in each hand. So I want to hold firmly enough, I want to have my fingers closed enough that I don't squish the bird or drop the egg, but I don't want to be holding so tightly that I hurt the bird or I break the egg and then I have egg all over me. So lastly, come back up here, or you can walk, that's fine. If he's happy you're walking, just make us like a 10-meter circle here. As far as offering your horse an even contact, a lot of times people say, oh, my horse isn't even in the rein, he's pulling on the right rein more than the left rein or whatever. You need to be sure it's not you offering an uneven contact. One hand should be the mirror image of the other. Your hands should be symmetrical. And they can be asymmetrical or not the mirror image in any number of ways. You can have one hand higher than the other. You can have one hand closer to your body than the other. You can ride with the thumb down on one side. But what I want you to do, Ruth, while you're walking around on this little 10-meter circle, is make one hand the mirror image of the other. Good. And then tell me, as you do that, what that feels like. What buzzword could we use?
Feels like I'm trying to balance a tray in front of me, hold like a tray of glasses.
Excellent. So she said it feels like she's trying to balance a tray in front of her like she's holding a tray of glasses. And if one hand is not the mirror image of the other, then she's going to spill whatever is on the tray. Okay, so one last thing, if Ziggy will indulge us for one more minute, if he can come here and just halt broadside. Now Ruth has her hands in what I call the work area. And what I want you to picture when your hands are in the work area is I want you to draw an imaginary box around your hand. Okay, you can walk again. And whatever rein effect you're using, sometimes we close a hand in a fist, sometimes we vibrate a rein, sometimes we turn the key in the lock. Doesn't matter what rein effect you're using. You always want to give the rein effect with your hands forward in the work area. So beautiful. So that your hands are in what we call a receiving posture. They can receive the power from the hind legs rather than, Ruth, bring your hands behind the work area. Both hands behind the work area. This steals power from the hind legs. So shorten the reins and put your hands back in the work area and then show what happens if you keep your inside hand in the work area, but your outside hand goes way forward out of the work area. I don't know if you noticed that, but right off the bat, Ziggy's shoulder fell out to the left, very hard to turn him. So let's see that again, just so we can see your left hand in front of your right hand, there. Okay, so, and put your hands back together again so that they're both in the work area. All right, that's great. So you see that no matter what you're doing, you want your hands forward in the work area so that you're not stealing power from the hind legs and you're not letting one of the shoulders escape because you've let a hand go forward out of the work area. Whatever rein effect you're giving, you give them with your hands forward in that little box, your little work area. So Ruth, I think we pretty much covered all the pieces, parts. Can you think of any pieces, parts we might have missed?
I'm sure we'll
come up with them.
And come up with them.
Yeah, as we go.
Basis.
Yeah, really. That's the thing about your position, guys. Just, it goes with the territory. We have to work on our positions every single day. Just pick away at it every single day. But what we're trying to do here is develop a shorthand so that with a quick buzzword, it's a little reminder to you to realign whatever part of your body needs to be fixed. So in the next lessons, we're going to be seeing some of these buzzwords being used with lunging exercises and with a variety of riders who have their own particular personal position issues.